Cheers. It is 11:11 a.m. Pacific time on Wednesday, miércoles, Mercury's day, and that means storytelling hour. And this is the one who has inspired our exploration today. It's a beautiful being, my baby girl Maya. Maya and the moon. Maya is actually named for a star, or one of the 7 daughters of Atlas, called Maya, who's one of the Pleiades. And Maya was born with her moon in Libra, rather close to a really wonderful, beautiful, powerful goddess star called Spica, or Spica, or Chitra, as it's said in India, where for many practitioners, it might be the most interesting star because it acts in many of the sidereal zodiacs, and certainly not all of them, but star-based zodiacs, as the prime fiducial, or as the star that a tropical zodiac is configured to, right? And so there's literally a Ayam Namsha, or particular sidereal zodiac called the true Chitra zodiac, for example, which treats this star that you see the moon aligned with here in these photographs as 0 degrees Libra. And then you move along from there, right? Giving each sign 30 degrees. That's the idea of a sidereal zodiac, an equal division of the sun's path, the heart of the zodiac, the ecliptic plane, into 12 signs of 30 degrees each, right? But the question is, well, where do you start? And some argue start with this star. So perhaps the most popular sidereal zodiac of our day and age, the Lahiri Ayam Namsha, configures 0 tropical or sidereal Libra to Spica or Spica Chitra, and the true Chitra argues to do that mathematically better. Some argue for a sidereal zodiac where you place Aldebaran, the eye of the bull, at 15 sidereal Taurus, and therefore Antares, the heart of the scorpion, across the way at 15 sidereal Scorpio, right? I mean, really, a sidereal zodiac in a sense is an arbitrary thing, because you need a prime fiducial, you pick a star. In the tropical zodiac, the Earth zodiac, which I prefer, the prime fiducial is not arbitrary at all. It is the point that is due east from the center of the Earth, right there, the place where the ecliptic norths across the equator. So the plane of the year, ecliptic, the plane of the day, equator, and 0 tropical Aries is that northern crossing of the equator by the ecliptic, which is an astronomical point. It's, again, in no way arbitrary. I'm not saying arbitrary means wrong, but it is important to know that when we just pick a star out there, like, why not pick Regulus? Why not pick the galactic center? Why not pick the Pleiades? Some have. Why Spica or Spica Chitra? And there's cool reasons that are suggested. Anyway, I happen to know that Maya was born at a time when the moon was very close to that star. And it's one of many, many, many things I love about her chart. Try to love my daughter more than I love her chart, you know. It's the chart that should help me know more about the daughter, not the other way around. Actually, no, it goes both ways. So the other morning, I was just out at a strange hour, as I often am. And this time, Maya was not with me. She was sleeping with Mama. And I looked to Mama Moon. Mama Moon, baby. Mama Moon. Maya loves Mama Moon. And I saw a moon with a bright star rising in the eastern sky. And it's like, oh, Maya's having a lunar return, because that star is Spica. That star is this beautiful goddess star that I love and adore so much. And so those photos you were just looking at, they were photos I took in that moment. Well, some moments later when I was able to then run upstairs, grab the camera and the tripod, get it set up so I could get a couple pictures. Speaking of Mama Moon, speaking of the goddess, thank you. Thanks for joining us for Storytelling Hour, Maya. Yeah, so I went out and I took this photograph. And here you can see this waning crescent moon. This was taken from our street here in the Bay Area of California. In other words, Northern Hemisphere. And everywhere on Earth, the moon will wax from the western side of her face to the eastern side of her face. And then she will wane. She will continue in that same direction, right? So after the full O, the moon will wane from the western side of her face to the eastern side of her face. In the Northern Hemisphere sky, that means from the right to the left. So when you see only the left side of the moon illuminated like this, it's the balsamic moon. It's the waning crescent. It's the last phase of the month before moon-sun conjunction. New moon and a new cycle begins, right? All right, well, the question today is, what in the heavens is a month? And if you know your moon star, so I was born with the moon at Alhaka, which is one of the horns of the heavenly bowl. Maya, my daughter, was born with the sun on that star. That's some synastry that she and I have, that her sun, her Gemini sun, is conjunct my Gemini moon. And the degrees of the zodiac that hosted the moon at the time of my becoming and the sun at the time of Maya's becoming, it's the horns of the heavenly bowl. And so when I see the moon every month with the horns of the bull, I know I'm having a lunar return. Kind of. Or yes, but there's many other ways to play that game. Hey, Winter, thank you so much for reminding folks who are here to please click the like button, share this thing around, support the channel, help us battle or embrace the algorithm, whichever one of those things we're supposed to do. So I just want to read actually what I wrote this morning when I decided to make this the topic for our journey and storytelling hour today. What in the heavens is a month? Some say time is an illusion. I notice they age. We cannot deny time in this material space. Are we not standing on a planet which spins? A rotation, of course, is called a day, and a revolution or orbit a year. But what in the heavens is the month? Well, an astrolonaut who calls himself Gemini should have at least two answers to that question. Two, how about five? Moony eyes to the sky. All right, so let's bring in some definitions of a month. Maybe amazing beings who are joining me here in at least one of three places. What is a month in your point of view? What in the heavens is a month? Or is it something that we find on a calendar? And if so, which? What's a month? Does anyone want to offer an answer to that question? And maybe we could define this astronomically. So here's an Earth, the armillary sphere. Earth spins every day, 24 hours with respect to that big star we call the sun, right? So that's a solar day. About 23 hours and 56 minutes with respect to her own axis, which would be a tropical day, or with respect to any far away star like Spica, right? So that's called a sidereal day. But regardless, like this is a very astronomical thing, right? That a day is courtesy of the sun spinning, the earth spinning. I mean, I'd say beneath our feet, but we're spinning with her. We are the earth, right? We are the world. And so a wonderful truth is this: when we witness the sun moving through our sky every day, from rise to reach to rest, and then the many, many stars and planets we might see, or moon at night, right? That clockwise motion through the northern hemisphere sky, or counterclockwise through the southern hemisphere sky, right? You're actually witnessing the result of our daily motion. In astronomy, we call this the primary motion, right? The spinning of our planet, right? So since we are on the spinning planet, how we notice that daily motion is through the spinning of the sky. And as the sky spins, so do the traveling lights like moon and sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the ones that we cannot see with our naked eye, right? When we watch not the moon or Jupiter, but when we watch sun moving through the signs, which is a difficult thing to see with your eyes, but there are many ways to do this. We track the sun dance on the horizons throughout the course of the year. We can see the sun climbing until summer solstice and declining until winter solstice in the midday sky, right? When we watch the sun move through the signs, we're actually witnessing what? The orbit of Earth about the sun, right? And so here are two astronomical realities of time that are very hard to deny. Now, we can say that this whole place is either a simulation or just some play, right? The Delilah, like, okay, and that it's all Maya, illusion, right? Well, but part of the illusion, even if it is that we are subject to time, right? And while time we should explore cyclically, and astrology helps us do so, right? There's also this linear nature from the bath to the bath, they say, right? Or from the womb to the tomb. And a huge part of that's we can very clearly explore astronomically is the spinning of our Earth, okay, the daily motion, and astrologically that would be the sun through the houses, right? And really, this is the motion of the same. So the stars through the houses, the signs through the houses, the moon and Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto through the houses, right? That motion of rotation, the daily motion, is a very principal and clear, and certainly not arbitrary period of experiential time, right? So you'll hear me say often, astrology is so much more than some symbolic language alone. Astrology is the poetic breath of nature. And as we re-nature our astrology by reconnecting to the living sky, we will remember the roots of the rules and the proofs of the astrological equations we use. Now, I used to say astrology is not a symbolic language, it's the poetic breath of nature. And now you'll hear me say so much more than a symbolic language, because honestly, much of what I do in astrology is certainly symbolic, or at least lives at some kind of physical level. Like, it's too microscopic for my eyes to observe. All right. Um, But there is this poetic breath of nature, the sacred astronomy, the earth astronomy, the earth astrology, as I like to say. And a very important part of that is, time and space, which are intimate bedmates, right? And so this spinning of the earth, right, which brings the signs through the houses, the daily motion. It's a beautiful truth, If astrology is the poetic breath of nature, in other words, if astrology, or let me say it this way, correspondences is the quality of the heavenly happenings. Astrology is the rainbow bridge between the quantity, the measurable heavenly happenings, which is the astronomy, and the correspondence is the immeasurable, you see, the quality, right? So if correspondence is the quality, well, it comes from quantity, right? And for those who just deny that there are any energetic effects that the human will experience based upon stars and signs, I bring Exhibit A, called Night and Day. Do you feel the same at 3 a.m. as you do at 3 p.m.? Now, your 3 a.m. might be my 3 p.m. and vice versa, because I'm crazy. Who's to say, right? But regardless, we know there's a whole harmonic code. Is harmonic a word? It should be. Harmonic astrology, interesting. Anyway, the hormones, the biological rhythms, so much of this has to do with the spinning of our earth with us upon her, right? The daily motion, right? And a wonderful thing is you only need 24 hours to experience the rise, the reach, the rest, the rooting of the sun through the astrological houses, as we call them these days, and that primary motion of light and night, of yang and yin, is so principal to our incarnational experiences, earthlings. Yes. We experience a similar cycle to sunrise, sunreach, sunrest, and sunroot, called spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Right? This, by the way, would be the energetic handshake that helps the strange astrological timing technique called secondary progressions work. Right? Where we, in astrology, turn days into years. So I recently turned 49 years old. I'm very interested, therefore, in the 49th day after my birth. What? Why would that be? Well, the day and the year, right, which astronomically are the rotation and the revolution. If you can't tell, my fist is starring as the sun. The day and the year have a pretty similar commitment to a cycle of yin and yang, right? Growing light, shrinking light, right? Darkening and the reduction of darkness. This kind of fourfold nature of spring, summer, fall, and winter, or morning, afternoon, evening, and night, however we want to call those things. Yes. And again, as we follow the sun through the houses every day, we're witnessing from Earth the rotation of Earth. As we follow the sun through the signs every year, we're witnessing the orbit of Earth, right? Rotation, day, revolution, or orbit, year. There's an interesting question here. Iris Eshel, bringing in the moon right there. Eshel, a moon goddess. How can we be sure we're spinning? I'm an FE astrologer, peace and love. So FE, I'm not sure what FE. Oh, flat Earth astrologer, I guess. What did you say? I'm a flat Earth astrologer? Is it an astrologer? And I'm an shamanic astrologer, or I'm a... Anyway, let's not get grammatical here. So yeah, I will say that in the flat Earth models, which by the way I've entertained more than most, I will challenge you or anybody who is interested in the flat Earth model, which is intriguing. I think it also challenges us to not believe the things we can't see, which I very much appreciate. But you know, there's a lot of globes around here. So, I'm a globey, I'm a round Earth guy. I have seen with my own eyes 2 celestial poles. I've seen Polaris. I see Polaris every night, clouds allow. And I've been down to the southern hemisphere and I have watched that there is a central point in the south that the stars also spin about. And I cannot possibly conceive of an astrophysical model that has 2 celestial poles without having 2 terrestrial poles. And so if I'm on a disc, I would have felt going, well, I didn't walk, I flew. And so, but I think I still would have felt kind of going to the other side of the disc to the place where there's now a south pole space. So I would just challenge you to, and maybe you want to answer that here. I don't know that this is the time or place. But I would challenge you to offer a physical model of Earth and sky in which there are not 2 terrestrial poles, because I have seen with my own eyes, and I welcome you to if you haven't, that there are clearly 2 celestial poles. When I've challenged flat earthers with that, they often come back with systems of mirrors in the space to keep us confused, Truman Show style, and I tend to go towards the more simple thing. I will say that the tropical zodiac can very elegantly function in the flat Earth models. There's many, many different flat Earth models. So I'm also want to get back to what in the heavens is a month. That being said, maybe we need to also address what are the heavens for that question to be asked with its highest intention or opportunity for, you know, answers that make sense. So whether the spinning of the sky is created by Earth spinning us, or if Earth is static and the sky spins about it, the rest of what I'll have to say today, in a sense, doesn't matter. But I will be sharing it in the model of Earth's rotation describing the day, Earth's orbit of the sun describing the year. Okay, so what is a month? What is a month? And thank you, Iris E. Shell, for that opportunity. Yeah, let's not be there too. I'm just intrigued. It's like, what is a flat Earth astrologer? How is it any different than any other astrologer? Sounds like you're a flat Earth cosmologist who's using astrology. And honestly, one of the many, many, many reasons why I've been compelled to explore the flat Earth thing is not only to address how much of my religion, because I realized through the challenges of people who were exploring flat Earth that holy smokes, like I have a religion, like I have this whole thing I believe that I haven't seen before. And oh my gosh, like I'm a priest of this religion. Like I teach ball Earth religion to people. Then I had to ask, well, how much have I seen? Like what have I seen with my own eyes that convinces me that the Earth is round and not flat, which is a great adventure for those who are willing to take it. How much of what I know is actually just what I've been told versus what I've experienced? I think that's a very important adventure for us all to take in all things, including things like, why does the sun rule Leo, as they say, by the way? What is a month? But another reason why I feel it's healthy for astrologers to contemplate a flat Earth cosmology is that many of the ancient practitioners of this craft were coming from there, right? I mean, it would seem that some of the ancients actually understood that the sun was at the center of a solar system. But certainly that's not the predominant cosmology at the root of ancient astrology, like Hellenistic astrology, that I've been so attracted to. And so, if we can at least see how astrology would work when viewed from a flat earth, it might actually help us connect to some of the code of the ancients. But you also, by the way, see in some of the old geocentric models a lot of the failures to explain some of the astronomical phenomena that, by the way, like flat Earth cannot, including two celestial poles, as I just described. But I'd be interested in hearing more about flat Earth astrology. Like, are you using different rules? Or are you using astrology but trying to awaken people to the idea that there's not a round Earth and that sky spins because the sky spins about the Earth, not because the Earth rotates? I mean, in a sense, it's all relative, you know? So I really appreciate that. I appreciate you giving us this opportunity for a little journey here. And I also love that you wrote peace and love there at the end. I went over to Instagram where that comment was to see if there was anybody offering what is a month, what in the heavens is a month. And there were many offers here. And I'm interested in seeing none of you wrote 28 days. So it would seem that you disagree with the makers of the pill. There was a cool question here that Linda posed. It's, I wonder who first connected menstruation to the moon cycle. And the answer is the first women who started looking. From what I understand, the oldest calendar that we are aware of is a calendar of moon phases carved into an animal bone that's like 100,000 years old. Moon phase calendar animal bone. Let's see if something comes up from that. I believe I first learned about that from a really wonderful book, one of the Wooden Book series that's called The Mayan and Other Ancient Calendars. Let me put an image on the screen of this amazing thing. Oh, I said 100,000 years old. That's embarrassing. But maybe Reddit doesn't have it right either. This says 34,000-year-old. Can anybody pronounce that word for me? Arignacian lunar calendar carved on a bone tablet found in... Let's just click on this link and see where it takes us. And I don't think we're going to get much but comments. And people are just getting into other places. So let's see if I type in 34,000-year-old moon phase calendar animal bone. Am I a human? I mean, would it be difficult for an alien to click that button? So do we get anything here? Okay. Anyway, I invite you to pursue that. How cool. And there's something about the way that they chose to diagram where the different phases of the moon are in respect to one another is quite intriguing. And there's a lot of that kind of looks like a fetus in the womb, doesn't it? Okay. Anyway, so my answer to your question again, Linda, would, I wonder who first connected menstruation to the moon cycle. I bet you it wasn't a dude. And I bet you that was happening as soon as people connected to what? To the month and the heavens. But what would it be? Let's read from the Green Knight here. I don't see why it can't be both. We can live on a flat plane on an oblate globe, and a month is simply an agreement. But it really seems like a lunar month is measurable without instruments. Okay. So we live on a round Earth and a flat Earth. All right. I mean, I do call myself Gemini Brett. I should be able to live. I should be able to live on two Earths at once. I mean, I think this goes back to, does matter matter? Right. So this for me is my response also to the time is illusion statement. I just caught myself noticing the wrinkles on my neck earlier in this jam. And, the gray of my hair, and, the truth that even the breatharians will die. I mean, maybe some will achieve rainbow body and, leave a footprint in the cave for us all to witness. But I've never met anybody that doesn't age. And that doesn't mean that time's not an illusion, like we can be incarnated even in a simulation. I honor that great game that's being played by many philosophers now and since Plato's Cave and before. In much of the Indian cosmology or Hindu, consciousness, the idea that we are simply spirit playing and all is Maya, right? This is an ancient thing to consider. I find it a little bit more practical to embrace time, and I think it helps me, though I don't think it has to be this way for anybody. This is a personal thing for me. Like knowing that matter matters helps me motivate to be a father. I don't want to get so lost in the idea that matter is the only reality, because I don't think I'm going to be a great father in that regard either. Though I certainly don't want to try to imprint my own spiritual questions or attempts for understandings on my daughter. I do want to attempt to answer questions when asked, Okay, anyway, let's get to some of these questions. But, and Green Knight brilliantly also says, but it seems like a lunar month is measurable without instruments. Okay, what is a lunar month? A month is simply an agreement. That's an interesting one, right? So there are many types of months. I'm going to get into some of my slideshows to at least just from an astronomical point of view address this. But let me share another thing. Hey Siri, are you spying on me?
No.
Cool. Hey Siri, how many days? Wait, let me
What
ask
would you like
this.
to convert?
Hey Siri, when was 24 weeks after June 16th?
It was Sunday, December 1st, 2024.
Okay, so Sunday, December 1st. My daughter was born on June 16th. And on Sunday, on December 1st, she turned 24 weeks old. So how old is she? Right. And so when you look at that one, you say, okay, well, 24 weeks, there's 4 weeks in a month, and 4 times 6 is 24. And so she's 6 months old. Right. I mean, would anybody go there? Because everybody's asking how old the baby is, right? So I'm obviously in this place even more than I typically am. But when you're counting weeks with a baby, and many of you here have or will, right? And you say she's 24 weeks old, once you get to that point, shouldn't you just say 6 months? But is she 6 months old? And the answer is no, he says while nodding his head. Okay, because there are many months. What in the heavens is a month? Now, here's another interesting one. Because how many of you would agree that 6 months is a year? Can I just get some yeses? Let me just, yes or no, 6 months is a year. Anyone? Well, let me just open my heart. So you wisely say, what's a month? The comments that actually are all coming in are no, 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 nope. Interesting. No yeses. Huh. Okay. For everybody that just replied no, did you once believe 6 months was a year? I'm getting a no, but so does anybody never? Interesting. Really? Why would I? Well, weren't we all taught that there's 12 months in a year? I mean, don't we utilize, most of us? I mean, I didn't sign up for it. I don't think. Maybe that was part of my like journey to Earth. They're like, hey, which calendar do you agree to utilize? And I was like, Gregorian, like sign me up. I think I don't remember that bit. But I was born into a culture that utilizes a Gregorian calendar, right? I just called my mom today to wish her a happy birthday because it's December 4th. Because it's a leap year this year, I'm more of the belief that her birthday happened yesterday when the sun returned to the tropical zodiac degree that hosted the light at the time of her becoming. In other words, it was her solar return from a tropical point of view, and that's what I see as a year. But my mom knows that her birthday is on December 4th as much as I know my birthday is on October 24th. And so I called my mom with a baby in my hands, her granddaughter, and said, happy birthday. FaceTime, son. And it was good. So, December 4th was once Julian, but now Gregorian, and that's an interesting trip. And that calendar has 12 months. Maybe here's another fun question. How many months are there in a year? So I'll leave that one as I continue to babble, astro babble. How many months in a year? So Green Knight, I think very accurately, right? Of course it's half a year. Of course 6 months is half a year, but what month are you talking about? Great, awesome. In that sense, maybe a calendar month, right? And weird olive months or months, right? And if month, what kind of month? Depends on your cultural perspective, writes Winter, right? I mean, I would suggest yes, but maybe more specifically your calendric perspective, right? So, and Thea writes what I'm saying here, that there's 12 months in the Gregorian calendar, there's 12 months in the Julian calendar, there's 12 months in many other calendars. Why would a calendar have 12 months? Why would a zodiac have 12 signs? Do you spend time there? 180 days in 6 months. So every 6 months you have a new moon in your chart. You're going to have to teach me more about that. PK, I want to honor this and then come back to this as well. Are there 12 or 13? I was expecting I might see a lot of you write 13 on there. Okay. Well, let me play this game. We'll just keep the robot involved. Hey Siri, what's half a year after June 16th?
Okay, I found this on the web for what's half a year after June 16. Check it out.
And maybe she's kind of hip to that. She's inviting me to go to the World Wide Web and to a half birthday calculator. Awesome. So I'm going to type in Maya's birthday, which is June 16th, 2024, and calculate. This is at calculator-online.net. Result, your half birthday is on Monday, December 16th. Okay. So it would be weird to have a calendar where the month named for the number 10, December, is the 12th month of the year, but here you are, right? It's the 10th month from the March equinox or the Aries equinox, the East equinox. But anyway, let's just play with the calendar that we were all presented. I don't think I'm wrong in saying that, but please correct me if I'm speaking to some of you who came up on a different type of calendar. So it's like Opus 125. Brian writes, the word month comes from menses, suggesting lunar origins of the word for month. Well, that means, of course, that you're tying the moon to the menstrual cycle, right? And we'd have to maybe get even further back to the root of etymology there. Was the month named for blood, or was blood named for the month in regards to menses? And also, and for those of you who are menstruating, does that happen with the lunar phase? Does that happen with the moon at a solar or a zodiac degree? Those are very different types of months, and I've seen both, by the way, and I've seen folks who I've had the honor of tracking along with them do one of the either or both. Okay, so for Maya, who was born on June 16th, let's just go full Gregorian calendar, call that 616. According to calculator-online.net, her half birthday will be December 16th. Now, is that just adding 6 calendar months? Let's see. I'm going to type in July 20th. That's Koa, other guy's birth date, and ask for a half birthday calculator. January 20th. Okay, so all this calendar calculator is doing is adding 6 calendar months. Is 6 calendar months half a year? Okay, well, what is a year? And by the way, there's many astronomical answers to that question. Okay, but a solar year, and let's go with a solar year. So that's also a tropical year. So where's an Earth and where's the Sun? If this fist is the Sun and this is the Earth, Earth, that would be when the Sun shines directly above the Tropic of Cancer, the Sun ingressing tropical Cancer, solstice, right? Maximum light, northern hemisphere, summer solstice, maximum shadow, southern hemisphere, winter solstice, yes? And so the period it takes to get from there back to there, 365 and about a quarter days, right? 365.242199. And this, by the way, is why the Gregorian calendar advent happened, because the Julian calendar considered the solar year to be 365 and a quarter days long, and that's not accurate. And so Easter started slipping from equinox, and that couldn't be. And so they had to just take 10 days out and then create the new calendar system, the Gregorian calendar system, which approximates the length of the solar year in a much better way, right? So the Julian calendar did, like most of us know, you have a leap day every 4th year, right? And it's the years that are divisible by 4, like 2024 divisible by 4, right? So it was a leap year. We had a February 29th this year, right? The Julian calendar did that. And that gives you 365 and a quarter days per year, because you're adding one day every 4 years, and therefore you're adding a quarter day every year, right? See how that works? There might be more interesting ways to do it, by the way, and I think that's a tale for another time, because I want to talk about what in the heavens is a month. These things do relate. The Gregorian system is this: you add a leap day every year divisible by 4, unless it is also divisible by 100. Unless it is also divisible by 400. Okay, so for example, there will not be a leap day on the year 2100, even though it is divisible by 4, because it's divisible by 100. But there was a leap day on the year 2000. It's divisible by 4, leap day. It's divisible by 100, no leap day, but it's also divisible by 400, so yes to leap day. And that gets you to a year equals 364.242, I believe. And then there's this other kung fu you have to do like every few thousand years that I'm ignorant to. But, that was the reason why we moved from Julian to Gregorian. But the Gregorian, as you know, it didn't update any of the month lengths in this weird calendar that's going 31, 30, 31, 30, 31, 20, 31, 28, sometimes 29, 31, 30, 31, 30, 31, 31. 30. Did anybody learn that? You count on your knuckles. And if you start at January, each of the months on a knuckle has 31 days. And the ones in the gaps have 30, except for that weird one that has 28, which is sometimes 29. What? Whoa, where would that come from? 28 and sometimes 29? That's a throwback to calendars that actually did their months with moons. Okay, so I'm intrigued that so many of you wrote 6 months is not a year. But it goes back to, however, what is a month, right? Like as Green Knight says, well, you can't say what is, 6 months is a year if you don't first define the month. Okay, well, in a year of 12 months, we could assume that half of the year would be half of those 12 months, which would be 6 months. But if we're working with a calendar that simply describes the month of November as a period of 30 days and the month of December as a period of 31, then what the heck? And I want to get back to a comment that came in before from Caroline here. Or is it Carolyn? Pardon me. 3 decans is 1 month, with the space in between to dance and feel in between, time like edge walking. Okay, well, some of that's intriguing. I would say 3 decans. So what do you mean by 3 decans? I think you mean the sun moving through 3 decans. That for me is called a sunth. And another way we could simply say that is the sun moving through a sign. Now, depending on how you're defining a decan, are you speaking like Kemet, like ancient Egypt decan, which is a whole other thing? And you wouldn't be, are you speaking about decades, which were the 10-day periods in the Roman calendar or in other calendars that use tens? But my assumption here is that you're speaking about decans the way that we utilize them in astrology today, which is to say the 10-degree divisions of the ecliptic, of the path of the sun. So 3 decans of 10 degrees in each of the 30-degree signs, right? Well, the sun moving through a sign, one of the 12 signs, that's a period that I call a sunth. And yes, rhyming with month, and for that reason. But it's all about the sun, or really the earth and the sun. Because at least according to this weird ball earth religion, why does the sun move through a sign? And the answer is because the earth is orbiting the light, right? Now, the sun moves through Capricorn in a very different amount of days than the sun moves through Cancer. Why? Because the Earth is closest to the sun around January 1st, to speak Gregorian, right? And when we're close to the sun, then we literally in our orbital path, if, to speak astronomically, are moving faster, right? And when we're far from the sun, that's called Earth's aphelion, far from Helios, far from sun. And that happens around July 4th each year in the Gregorian calendar. When we're far from the sun, then we are literally moving slower, right? Well, when Earth's moving slower about the sun is moving slower through our zodiac. When Earth is moving faster about the sun, our relative experience of that is the sun is moving faster through our zodiac, right? And since we're closest to the sun in January, or let me say, when the sun is in Capricorn, Earth is at perihelion, close to sun. That's the time when the sun is moving fastest through our zodiac. We're often taught in astrology that the sun moves 1 degree per day, right? Well, that's just kind of simple estimate based on about 365 days in a year and 360 degrees in the zodiac circle. So it's like 1 day, 1 degree. And that's generally true. But the sun in January is moving at its fastest pace, more than 1 degree per day, and in July at its slowest pace, less than 1 degree per day, right? And so if you're born with the sun closer to Capricorn, you have fast sun, and closer to Cancer, you have slow sun. Okay. So importantly, the sun does not move through a sign or 3 decans. That's what I'm assuming you mean by 3 decans. And maybe you updated that if I scroll down. In the same amount of time. Signs are not equal divisions of solar time, or let's say terrestrial time, either way, right? Either the sun's going about us or we're going about the sun. So I'm just going to speak from the geocentric Earth on our planet, witnessing the heavens point of view. The signs are not equal divisions of time based upon the sun's movement about the Earth. They are equal divisions of space, right? So we take this point, this is the tropical zodiac, where the plane of the year, the ecliptic, that's the plane of our orbit, norths across the plane of the day, the equator, that's our rotation, right? So the tropical zodiac, again, a non-arbitrary prime fiducial, a start point that is absolutely astronomically defined and is completely real and beautifully ties together the plane of the year, the ecliptic, and the plane of the day, the equator. The tropical zodiac is the only zodiac that ties both of these together. Sidereal zodiacs, you pick a star, right? Constellational zodiacs, even more arbitrary than that. All right. Anyway, so when we start from here, we can take this circle, which has these very clear 4 powerful kind of astronomical points of equinox, of the north solstice, Cancer solstice, right? West equinox, I like to call 0 Libra. It's west of the center of Earth where we are all one. The south solstice, 0 Capricorn, which is above the Tropic of Capricorn. That's the southern bounds of the sun's travel. 0 Cancer, the northern bounds. That, by the way, all looks kind of cool in a flat Earth model. Maybe I should do that. No, I shouldn't. Anyway, if we just start from here and we divide this 90 degrees from 0 Aries to 0 Cancer into 3 slices of 30 called Aries, Taurus, Gemini, right? We can further divide Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. And actually, this armillary sphere does. Does it? Yeah. No, it doesn't. This is using other divisions. Anyway, we can divide those in 10-degree slices of decans, but 3 decans is 1 sign. So the sun moving through a sign equals space. They're all 30 degrees of ecliptic, but not equal time. Again, because Earth's orbital path is not a circle. Like all orbits, it's elliptical, and there's close and far. In other words, fast and slow. But let's take the average amount of time it takes for the sun to move through one of the 12 equal signs. Okay, now this would be true sidereally and tropically as well. It wouldn't be true in some Ophiuchian 13th sign situation, would it? But let's take 365.24. We're going to use that for our year. Oh, and I type that number into my computer and it opens up like 50 presentations I've created. Okay, I wanted this calculator. Let's see if I'm able to share this thing. All right, great. So here's the year, an estimate for the year. Let's divide that by 12. So how long does it take for the sun on average to go through each of the signs? And you get 30 and a half. I'm doing that again because I'm used to getting a different number back. Yeah, I pushed in the wrong number somehow. Somebody probably told me that. So 30.44 days in the average amount of time it takes the sun to move through an equal sign. Right? Can you see why we're using a calendar that alternates between 31 and 30 days? Because what's the average of those two? Of course, 30.5, which is pretty close to 30.436849916666666 forever. I guess that 6 is interesting. Right? So the alternation between 30 and 31 days is not as arbitrary as it might seem. And you'll be told by many that like the white man destroyed the ancient true wisdom feminine indigenous 13 moon calendars, replaced them with a 12 moon calendar to create a patriarchal code of rulership, and purposefully constructed a calendar that's out of harmony, so we will stay out of harmony. Now, the Scorpio in me is always entertained by any deep conspiracy theories, so bring it. But at the same time, there's so much lack of astronomical understanding, or I'll say experience, in a statement like that. I could grab 4 books off the shelf, by the way, that say that right now. And I hear astronomers and astrologers all the time talk about the month as a period of 28 days. And it's like, what? Okay, so let's get into that space. And I'm surprised nobody wrote 13 months in a year, because it's a very common theme. PK did write this thing: 12 new or no moons, 13 full, or 13 new and 12 full. And so this is per year. Interestingly, 2025 calendar year has 12 new moons and 12 full moons. In that calendar year, right, Gregorian calendar, so January to January. But when you calculate from vernal equinox to vernal equinox, I think it's always either 12-13 or 13-12. Right, okay. Cool, so interesting. And this gets back to, well, what in the heavens is a month? Okay, so let me just rewind to some of what you wrote when I first asked that question many moons ago, at least many, many minutes ago. The first that came through was Dawn Marie, hey Dawn, who wrote new moon to new moon. That's a month. Okay. Winter says it's a solely lunar thing, which, by the way, is a very similar response, maybe less specific. The period in which Earth's satellite, the moon, appears to change through all of her phases before starting the whole cycle over again. Okay, so the same thing. The cycles of Mama Moon. Okay, which cycles? So is it the phase cycles, which were the three that were mentioned before? The solely lunar, as Winter accurately described it. Okay, so that's where we are. So let's explore those. And I want to bring in exhibit 17. let me go here. So this is a slide from the midst of a million in my eclipse workshop that you can find at Constellations. So as with Kevin's comment on the screen here, the cycles of Mama Moon. Well, which cycle? I mean, if we do all of the cycles, we're going to have all of these different periods. Okay. So, I mean, interestingly, and let me look again to the date of this photograph that I took, or this experience that I had recently. So this again is like a much better image of the shape of the moon, and it actually taught me a pretty cool thing that should have been obvious, but it taught me a cool thing. So this I can see, it was November 27th, 2024. And that was the moon with Spica. So if you haven't been here since the beginning, I showed up with my daughter Maya, and she was in this experience of seeing the moon with Spica or Chitra, the shaft of wheat, the priestess of the heavens hole, is a very beautiful star. I love it so much. Maya was born with her moon close to that star. And so on November 27th, I saw the moon close to that star. Now, I believe some people on Earth had the opportunity to see the moon actually occult that star. That would happen here in California when the moon and the star Spica were underground, so I was not able to see them. So that's called an occultation of Spica. That's happening at this time, and that depends upon where the lunar nodes are at the zodiac. So an interesting thing about Maya's becoming, for example, is that the moon was near one of the Bohemian or magical stars of Mercury, which is occulted for a short period of time every 18.6 years, which is the transit cycle of the lunar nodes. All right. Speaking of the nodes, that will bring us to one of the many astronomical definitions of one of the many periods that we could call a month. Okay. So I saw Moon Spica and I was like, wow, Maya's having a lunar return. But what kind of a lunar return, right? Because Maya she was born with the sun in Gemini and the moon in Libra. So does anybody want to offer what Gemini sun in Libra moon, what phase of the moon that is? And I'll just check with the comments as you come through. I can answer that myself if you would prefer, right? So this was definitely not a lunar return for Maya in regards to the phase of the moon. So actually, let me just say, she was born with the moon in waxing trine. That's how I prefer to call it. I prefer, Winter says accurately here, waxing gibbous. No need for that question mark, sister. Yeah, absolutely. So the waxing gibbous, or PK writes first quarter-ish. You can kind of go either way with that. So you're both right. And you're also both right the question mark, because it could be either, because it depends upon the system of phases that you use, right? And so the most common phase system used by both astronomers and astrologers today is an eightfold or octile based lunation of New moon, moon-sun conjunction, accurately described by PK before as the no moon. Why? Because unless it's a solar eclipse, we can't see the moon. When the moon and the sun are conjunct, the moon is under the beams of the sun, right? In the flames, being renewed, I would suggest. But anyway, so from there until the moon waxes 45 degrees, or 1 octile, 1/8 of the zodiac circle from the sun, that would be the new. And then 45 to 90, that's the waxing half moon, right? Or the first quarter moon, half in phase, quarter through the cycle. That's 90 degrees moon, sun, right? So 45 to 90 is the waxing crescent phase. 90 to 135, the waxing half phase. So in that regard, with the sun in Gemini and the moon in Libra, that would fall into that between 90 and 135 degrees between the luminaries. And so PK, yes, first quarter-ish. Winter, waxing gibbous, I kind of go more there, because as soon as the moon starts getting some bubble back from that strange straight line you see in her face a couple of times a month, so in the wax, right, the waxing half moon, and then we start getting this bubble, it just feels more gibbous to me. And I prefer, because I'm very 12 oriented as an astrologer, I should say as a 12 sign astrologer, I prefer a system of 12. And so I just consider the waxing half to run from like 90 to 120, and the waxing trine to run from 120 to 150 phase angle between the moon and the sun. And then we get into the waxing quincunx. And that just helps me learn to see the shapes of whole sign aspects in the way that the moon is reflecting sunlight to my earthly eyes, right? Okay. So we have found most of the responses, whether like very specifically described or not, most of you feel, those of you who chose to comment, that a month is about the phases of the moon. Okay, well, moon to Spica, back to moon Spica, or for me, moon from Alheka, horn of the bull, back to Alheka, right? That is not phases. Neo, I'm seeing this, and I'm going to get back to it. That is called, if we're looking at a star, a sidereal month. So let me get these 4, and these are not the only 4 different types of astronomical months, back onto the screen. So now the one that I think has been most commonly reported here in regards to what in the heavens is a month, and I would suggest is definitely the most common response that we would hear from anybody who looks to the sky, is the phases of the moon. So Don wrote new moon to new moon. Oh, the moon-sun relationship. Winter wrote solely lunar. We could call it luni-solar. It's about from Earth, the relationship of the moon and the sun, or the moon with the sun, right? And so you see that here at the top, written as synodic. Synod means relationship. The synodic month is tuned to the relationship of moon and sun, who conjoin in the zodiac about every 29.53059 days. All right. So now you see that 29. And this is why I suggest February 28 and sometimes 29 is not, as the great Tom Robbins wrote, as worthless as the extra R in its name, but rather a throwback to lunar phase, especially when it's 29. Okay, so there are many calendars from ancient times, and some still in use today, that actually do time their months to the phases of the moon. And that would mean that every month is about 29 and a half days. Now, you could do a 29 and a half day month. For example, you could start a month at sunrise, and 29 and a half days later start the next month at sunset, and 29 and a half days later start at sunrise and sunset, like that. But it'd be kind of maniacal. So what was done, and what I've only seen done in calendars like the Chinese calendar, the Chinese solely lunar calendar, sun moon calendar, or the Hebrew, which comes from the Akkadian, which comes from the Babylonian, right, is an alternation between months of 30 days and 29, 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 29. And in this way, you're keeping that 29 and a half day average period. Now, consider that in the Gregorian calendar, and this was done in the Julian calendar, that you have this February thing, which isn't 30 or 31, it's 28 and sometimes 29. Kind of interesting. I mean, it would be more interesting if it alternated between 29 and 30, in my opinion. And to do that, all you'd have to do is to take one of the 31s and make it into a 30, one of the 31-day months and make it into a 30-day month. Like, I don't know, July or August, but you're going to take the 31st day of the month away from Julius or Augustus? Probably not. Maybe October, we lose Halloween, you know. but you see what I mean? Like, I would prefer, even if we were doing this 30, 31 day thing, I think there's a better way to do it rhythmically. It does honor a sun, the average time it takes for the sun to move through a sign, an equal division of space, 12 equal divisions of space along the sun's path. Why? Why 12 signs? Well, it would seem to have something to do with the 12 months in a year. Neo, you mentioned the Indian calendar. Which Indian calendar? PK here. There's this weird flip-flop with the language here that's always tripped me up. When talking sidereal in regards to the moon, it's different than when we say sidereal in regards to the stars. I don't believe so. Maybe sidereal with the moon and sidereal with the planets. But sidereal really means moon star. Okay, so when I was seeing the moon conjunct Spica the other morning and knowing that, oh wow, Maya's turned 6 months today, 6 sidereal months, because the sidereal month we can track as moon conjunct not our star, the sun, but a faraway star. Okay. So we'll see a couple of things here. Synodic, and you'll see the glyph for the sun. So moon, sun, synod meeting. The monthly meetings of moon and sun for new moon, which is a no moon, right? The conjunctions. About every 29 and a half days. 29.53, probably a good one to remember if you want to know these sacred numbers. 29.53059 if you want to get more specific, but please know that these are all averages, okay? And it depends on how far the Earth is from the sun when the month begins. That's a good thing to know, and other astronomical considerations too. If you take this period of new moon to new moon, right? So moon sun conjunction to moon sun conjunction. We could do full moon to full moon. That's a little harder to see. You've probably noticed that the day before and the day after full moon, moon looks full. You could do waxing half moon to waxing half moon. That'd actually be easier to track than either of those other two. But either way, from any phase of the moon-sun relationship back to that phase. So I was born with the moon in a disseminating or waning gibbous, or I prefer to say waning trine, or it's like I have like 126 degrees between the moon and the sun. That happens about every 29.53 days, right? That would be one image of a lunar return, a lunar phase return. Really, that's a solely lunar return, right? Well, there's 12.37 of those in a year. So PK, that's going to pet that cat of that thing you posed before of like, are there always 12, either 12 new moons and 13 full moons, or 13 new moons and 12 full moons? The answer is no, right? If this said 12.5, the answer I believe would be yes. Okay. Sidereal is a different period of time. That is the consecutive conjunctions of moon with a star. Now, you see, I didn't put a star here, but rather I wrote the Earth glyph because I'm actually wanting to invoke two different types of months here. This is why I told you there'd be 5, but we're going to go to more than that. That's called a tropical month. So what is a tropical month? Let's use the model of moon orbiting the Earth. Truthfully, the moon and the Earth are doing a dance together as they collectively orbit the sun, and we're all doing something else together, and Jupiter's in on it, But if we just use the model of Earth about the sun and moon about the Earth, right, the tropical would be moon from the Tropic of Cancer back to the Tropic of Cancer. That's where the north axis of Earth is always leaning, okay? And it's above the Tropic of Cancer. Now, the moon can go out of bounds. She is every month in Cancer at this time in which I'm sharing this in 2024 because of where the lunar nodes are. But regardless, the moon gets around the tropical zodiac in like 27 1/3 days. There's very little difference between the tropical month moon to the same tropical zodiac degree and the sidereal month moon from a star back to that star, because there's very little precession of the axis of Earth in that 27 1/3 days. Okay, so tropical month, sidereal month, you have to get to many more decimal points than what I'm showing on this screen. It's basically 27 1/3 days. 27.321 applies to both of those, actually. And then you get the 3-2-1 liftoff happening, and it's fun. Well, what happens if we divide the year by that period of time, moon star to moon star? And you see there's 13 and about a third sidereal or tropical months in a year. Okay, so if you're tracking lunar returns, like I'm a tropical astrologer, I prefer the tropical zodiac, though I certainly work with stars and with constellations as well. When I see the moon getting back to 2501 Gemini every sidereal month, I'm like, I'm having a lunar return. But also when I see the moon waning and 126 degrees from the sun, I'm having a lunar return. They're very different types of lunar returns. One's a sidereal, or I'm really tracking a tropical lunar return when I look at the moon at 25 Gemini in the chart. I'm trapping a sidereal lunar return. I'm maybe trapping a sidereal lunar return when I see moon with Alheka, the horn of the bull, which was where the moon was when I was born, right? So I see that, and I see that in the sky, which is wonderful, right? In the chart, I'm seeing a different thing, right? Well, I can also see my lunar phase return, which would be the synodic return in the sky, because I've learned that shape of the moon's smile when she's waning and 126 degrees from the sun. And I know the phase, it's about waxing trine, not exactly, of the moon when Maya was born. And I'll get to see that. And the 6th time I see that, I will know that she's 6 months old. But she already turned 6 months old on December 1st, which was 24 weeks after her birth, because 4 weeks is a month, right? And she already turned 6 months old when the moon was conjunct Spica 3 days before that, because a month is moon at a star back to moon at that star, right? Or she'll turn 6 months old on December 16th, because of course December 16th is 6 months from June 16th when she was born. So she's turned 6 months old, and then she turns 6 months old a few days later, but she won't turn 6 months old until a while after, like 5 days after the coming full moon. But then actually she won't turn 6 months old until December 16th. How old is my baby? So when people ask me this, I have to I'm just like, hey, I have a video on YouTube. It's like 3 hours long, where I'll try to answer that question. And I probably won't even be able to. Let me show you an interesting thing. Hey Siri, are you spying on me?
Nope.
Okay, that's good. Hey Siri, what's 365.2422 divided by 2?
365.242. 2 divided by 2 is 182.6211.
Okay, so we're going to say there's 182.6 days in a year. Let me just round that up to 183, and we'll say that day or the day before, okay? Hey Siri, what's 183 days after June 16th?
It's Monday, December 16th, 2024.
Okay, so actually December 16th is half a year from June 16th. How you like that? How you like them apples? Anybody else want to try? And by the way, I'm not going to put on the screen because we're not sharing her rising sign, so we can keep something private until Maya chooses if she'd like for her chart to be shared or not. But when I look at her sun and I ask, when after her birth will the sun be opposite her sun, right? So solar opposition would be a good image for half a year. The answer is December 17th at 2:08 a.m. All right. And so that for me would be another image of half a year. That's 6 suns, but not 6 months. Do you feel me? So, I mean, the month is a confusing thing. If you're not confused yet, I'm not doing my job. The day, though, solar versus sidereal is an interesting question, and it does come into advanced astrological techniques like primary directions, for example. But either way, the Earth spins, or sorry, flat earthers, the sun circles us only like 6 feet above our heads. In 24 hours. So day, like it's real, you experience it, you measure it, the year, watch the fig leaves fall from the branches. And you know what I'm saying? Like the seasonal cycle, it takes much longer, but it's pretty easy to connect to. The next cycle that we can experience really astronomically is the lunation, or the sidereal month. I mean, the old zodiacs, they weren't solar. You'll go blind trying to tell me what stars the sun is aligned with. They were lunar. When you watch the moon move through the stars, that's a month. So in the old image, this is like sidereal months, the moon moving through the lunar mansions. In many of the traditions, the lunar mansions are like 13 1/3 degrees of ecliptic arc. Why? Because that's the average daily travel of the moon, right? Or from one night to the next, because you take the sidereal month of 27.3, or let's say, take the zodiac circle and divide that by 27 1/3, and you see that the moon moves on average about 13 1/3 degrees in a 24-hour period. Right? And this was witnessed and honored by the ancients. Well, how did they get from there to 12? Because the ancients were obviously also honoring the phases of the moon. Now, if you say there's 13 moons in a year, from what I've found thus far, is the most accurate that could be is if you're talking about sidereal, draconic, or anomalistic years, where anomalistic would be the most accurate. But none of these, as you can see, are exactly 13. And so when people tell you that the patriarchy replaced the indigenous 13 moon calendars with the false 12 moon calendar, they're just they're just inexperienced. But you know what? No, I'm going to say what it almost came out. They're ignorant. And maybe ignorant, right? Which means I'm not going to go have a look. And usually you'll hear that somebody heard that in a book, they heard that online, fuck yeah, fight the patriarchy, let's go for it. Or somebody presented them with the perfect mystical calendar, and if we don't all align to 13 moons in a year, the world is going to sink to shadow consciousness. And it's like, okay, but are there 13 moons in a year? Now, What's 13 times 28? And the answer is 364. All right, so there are 13 28-day periods in a year. So for those who make like the pill and believe the month is 28 days long, you win. And you need some day out of time thing that you invent to get from 364 to 365. And you might want to deal with the fraction over 365 rotations in an orbit as well. But you aren't really doing shit that has to do with the moon. Experientially, how are we going to experience the moon? Moon from a star back to moon to that star. Sidereal month, 27.32 days. Moon at a zodiac degree, back to the moon at that same zodiac degree. If you're also an astrologer and looking at charts, okay? Well, if it's the tropical zodiac, that's a tropical month, 27.32 days. If you're a sidereal zodiac, sidereal month, 27.32 days. Right? We have to get pretty deep into the decimal spaces to see a difference between a sidereal of the stars month and a tropical of the tropics month or Earth's pole month or the directions north-south month, because there's very little axial precession within that 27.32 day period. Okay, and there's 13.37 of those in a year. If you feel that a month astronomically is about the phases of the moon, as all of you who responded do, then we're talking about 29.53 day periods on average. Let's call it 29 and a half days, right? And that's why the ancient lunisolar calendars or lunar calendars alternated between months of 30 and 29, 30 and 29. The issue there, by the way, is there's not 12 of those in a year. There's 12.37. The silver years we often call 12 periods, 12 lunations. So 12 times 29 and a half days. That's 354 days. And that, of course, is short of a year. And so if you want to also honor seasons in Earth Sun, because, I don't know, survival, food, then you need leap months in that system. And I will invite you to explore other videos I've put up about that in the past. So I really want to convey this with tons of imagery so people can really integrate this and, more importantly, practice with this. Okay? But just follow the phases. And PK, like, I love the research you're doing, by the way. Take it out many years and you will see, PK, a 19-year cycle. It's called the Metonic cycle these days, even though the awareness of the 19-year synchronization of silver and gold significantly predates Meton, the Greek astronomer. It goes back to the origins of the Chinese calendar, the Babylonian calendar at least, and probably before then. But 19 years, 19 solar years are almost exactly equivalent to 235 synodic months or sidereal months or months of moon phases. And almost exactly equivalent to 254 sidereal months. Okay, so in review, is a month 28 days, 4 weeks? No. Look, the week is incredibly arbitrary or non-astronomical. I mean, it's approximating a quarter of a lunation, but a lunation is not 28 days if you are teaching that. If you are in an astrology class where they teach that, you might want to speak up or politely send a little to the teacher after. If you read that in a book, you might want to send in a little letter to the editor, Or you should at least just not be swayed by that astrologer's personal ignorance. It's not a rare thing. It doesn't mean when I say ignorant, by the way, there's many forms of ignorance. There's simple ignorance, which is you just don't know a thing. And so why would you not teach what's wrong? You don't know what's right. It's okay. That's how we live life. I'm ignorant of most things, right? Complex ignorance is when you learn that you're wrong and keep perpetuating that thing because you like the pretty slide you made or whatever, be careful of that one. Be careful of those people, especially the ones who are so good at lying that they forget that they are teaching a falsehood. Did we start talking about politics? Anyway, sorry. Let's get back to the tea and the moon. So the types of months we've mentioned, 28 days, not a month, 4 weeks, the week of 7 days, right? Like 7 is such an interesting number, and it has, of course, these beautiful astrological roots of Moon Day and Mars Day and Mercury's Day and Jupiter's Day and all that, right? But there really is no astronomical period that I've yet seen or met of 7 days. It's an approximation of a quarter of a lunation. So from new moon to the waxing half, from waxing half to full, from full to the waning half, from waning half to new. But 28 is not 29 and a half. And that 1.5 day difference between those two periods starts to really add up. And it doesn't take long for it to. Okay. So back to the menses question, like how many of you who are experiencing regular menstruations, and I know regular menstruations, not necessarily regular, right? But how many of you menstruate on a 28-day cycle? The answer typically would be people who are taking birth control pills that are on a 28-day thing. It will happen. I've seen partners who are menstruating with a sidereal month, right? So it's like, or tropical months, like, wow, every time the moon is in Aries. I have more often seen partners menstruate with a lunar phase. And some astrologers long ago and in more recent days have suggested that when our natal phase realigns every synodic month of about 29.5 days, we are most fertile. I have utilized that to help some clients become pregnant with their partner. So like be really specific on that one. And by the way, not working not only with the woman, but also with the man's face, which is an intriguing thing. I've also worked on it for me as well. Like, I mean, my belief is that men have monthly cycles as well. And that really when we connect with connected women who are following their cycles and honoring their ovulation and honoring, menstruation and giving them some space to, have red tent days, if you will, to honor the term from a tradition, that they can help guide men into understanding our own cycles, and so that we can understand, wow, like this is my ovulation time. Like, let me do stuff, you know what I mean? And let me be impregnated with amazing ideas to explore in this cycle. And then also on the opposite side of that, like, let me shut it down for a few days, So that's something we can do with the full moon and the new moon, right? That's like kind of global. Interestingly, both bringing king tides, right? But we can also do that with our own natal moon phases, and it's something I highly recommend. And this isn't me saying that we should ignore lunar returns in the zodiac of your choice, or ignore that sacred time every 27 and a third days when moon gets back to a star. Okay, so sidereal month, moon star, moon star. Tropical month, about the same period of 27.32 days, moon to the tropical degree that hosted the moon at the time of your birth, back there. Okay, synodic month, moon, sun, moon phases. So whether we're looking new moon to new moon, full moon to full moon, or in my case, like waning 126 degrees of moon from sun, which by the way, we would usually say is a degree measure more than 180. It's good to measure from the sun to the moon. So you don't get 90 waxing and 90 waning, you get 90 or 270, for example. But regardless, knowing your phase is cool. And then going out and being with Moon at that time and really seeing the shape of her smile, whether it's growing, waxing, or shrinking, waning, or full O, or not seen at all, new, like really knowing how the Moon, Sun, Earth relationship was expressed by the shape of Moon's smile at the time of your becoming is a really wonderful thing to celebrate. Okay. A Sunth, the time of the sun through a sign, an interesting one to consider. And I would suggest this, realigning to light time, right time, cosmic time is something that we astrologers do, even if we're not doing it intentionally, following the sun through the signs, sunths, following the phases of the moon, celebrating new and full moon, waxing and waning moons. Like you're doing it. But you might also want to be aware that 28 days is not a month and of other things like this. So the draconic month is moon at the north node, back to moon at north node or south node, or your own personal lunar latitude back to that lunar latitude. That's a period of about 27.21 days. The one that is closest to 28 is the anomalistic month, which is almost 28, 27.55. That can be seen in the chart as moon, true black moon Lilith, back to true black moon Lilith. That's the moon's perigee. Well, Lilith would be apogee, far from Earth, perigee, far from Earth, right? Far, close, far. And by the way, we can see that. It's a small moon, big moon, small moon. That happens every month. And that anomalistic month is the one that's closest. Now, I know very few astrologers who are really tracking that. Some are Lilith specialists, and hopefully they know about the anomalistic month. I will say that if you study eclipse periods, and I highly recommend you do, then the Saros series of eclipse families, like this, they unite the synodic, draconic, and anomalistic together, a period of about 18.03 years, and two eclipses of the same family give you shapes like these. Eclipse, dragons, moons. Let me show you this. This comes from what? Do I not even have the? There we go. That's funny. Like that's just like me. It will take me 24 slides to get to the title slide sometimes. But this was a class that I taught in Constellations, which is the School of Astrology's membership community. Many of you I know are already involved. I will say that if you want to sign up today, if you're not, you can sign up for only $16 a month. But what's a month? In this case, we're using Gregorian calendar months, which, by the way, I'm honoring more and more as I connect more to cycles of space and time. But anyway, that's because it's like what the computer code is going to allow me to do. So head over to geminibrett.com/constellations, and that will bring you to a place where you can learn more about it. Nadine, thanks for saying this. Sign up. Constellations is awesome. We have regularly scheduled weekly community discussions so you can connect with friends of like heart and mind and talk about this weird stuff. We have a teaching every month. I teach once a month in an astrology class. We have a wonderful astro-herbalism teacher, Amala Hall, who's connecting plants and planets. A wonderful Astro Tarot teacher, Phelan Shiva, who's leading an Astro Tarot circle of exploring these two crafts and how they entangle. A wonderful teacher in Alyssa Luna, who's offering a different Astro embodiment practice every month of yoga and Qigong and such as the sun's moving through the signs, the sunths, right? So come on in. When you do, you will find that all classes that I've taught already this year are there waiting for you, including this eclipse masterclass series of eclipse and eclipse cycles masterclasses. It's about 7 hours of stuff. And then there's other classes I've already taught that are already all up. And so are Alyssa's practices and Amala and Phelan's circles and classes that have happened already this year. So invisible planets coming to us and through us via their connection to visible planets, declination, the Venus synodic cycle, creative ways to play with Mercury retrograde, Pluto's final Capricorn visit, some thoughts on that. All of this stuff until we get to the next one, which will be Introduction to Midpoints and Harmonic Structures, which I will be teaching a week from Saturday. That's all there. So literally $16. Can't beat that a month. You can leave anytime. And when you come in, there's so much more than you could probably see in a lifetime waiting for you there. Come on in. Another thing I wanted to share, and let me get back to that comment, and then this is the last thing I'll have time to, because I'm going to go get this haircut. Otherwise, many mainstream astrologers are entertaining the sidereal 13-sign astrology, including Ophiuchus or even Serpens, to align with visible skies, quoting that the 12-sign switch happened during Babylon. Well, we have zero evidence of a 13 constellation anything before Babylon, by the way. Just to put that out there, many people claim that there's ancient roots in this 13 sign thing. Not in any way true. Not from anything that we found in history thus far. For me, it's kind of like do what you want to do, but I just want everybody to know that the Ophiuchian thing was seeded by constellational boundaries that were described not in ancient times, but when? In 1929. And by whom? By the IAU, the International Astronomical Union, who, by the way, vehemently denies the very idea of astrology or correspondences. And so I find it interesting that any practicing astrologer would choose to get the framework for their astrology from an organization who clearly and often states that astrology is nonsense. I find that interesting. I think you should as well. I will say that I know Ophiuchus to be an amazingly powerful constellation. And in fact, let me show you this. This Sunday, I will be sharing a class about some of the sacred astronomy of Ophiuchus and the importance of it in our day and age. Now, I'm not there right now. I'm at this weekly Wednesday or astrology, right? Storytelling hour playlist. It's been tons of these now. Not sure if all of them have made it up. Anna and I are starting to do a series on the signs, so we'll do the Sagittarius jam sometime soon, I hope. I'm so happy to be sharing with my beautiful partner, Scorpiana. Look, this one's live right now. You're here. Amazing. Last week, check this out. If you weren't here, the Soul Songs with Eric. I think you'll love it. But very early in the game, I pre-recorded one called Nophiuchus. Although back then I was pronouncing it Ophiuchus, but I was corrected in that video in the chat. So can't remember by whom, but thank you for that. So Ophiuchus is a better pronunciation in the old Greek. Amazing constellation. And so, by the way, if you go to esarastrology.com, it's the International Society for Astrological Research. I typically present for them like once a year. If you scroll down on their homepage, you will see this webinar, Ophiuchus Orion. and the galactic gates in our precessional age. Now, if you're an ESAR member, it's free, as are their Star Club meetings every week. If you're not, it's $15. I will say this one is worth it. You're going to hear information you're not going to find anywhere else. Be on my mailing list. I probably will teach it for the School of Astrology next year as well. I want to give ESAR some time. But yeah, it's something that the sky has shown me, which is one of the most important images of our day and age, and has everything to do with Orion and Ophiuchus. So I'm not in any way personally suggesting that Ophiuchus is anything but amazing. I just have a really hard time with these 13 sign folks, especially in their claim that this thing comes from antiquity. There's no evidence of that, and they're really missing out on an opportunity to honor the beautiful 12ness in the sacred geometry, which is the very foundations of the zodiac and of our craft. I'll be speaking about that some in this talk on Sunday for ESAR. I hope you'll join me there. Nina, thanks so much for saying this. Constellations is worth it. Constellations is class. Nice. So we can hear some celebration from the UK. Clearly in such a wonderful statement. Nina, I appreciate that, and your amazing music and art. And your amazing shares in community space. So for those of you in Constellations, in case you didn't get the note, I'm not teaching this Saturday. I'm going to teach next Saturday on December, I think it's 14th, because I have this thing on Sunday. Isabel tells me it's time to go. The doorbell rings. 13th is quoted as the lost goddess in sacred feminine. Go. By whom? Now, let me just share that 13 is very much in the moon. The moon moves 13 degrees per day, really 13 and 1/3, and 1/3 kind of looks like 13 too. There are 13 Venus cycles per sign in the retrogradation of the Venus star. It's not always 13, but typically there are. That I've found in my work that I call the 13th flower. 13 is obviously part of sacred number, the Fibonacci sequence 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, which is described in the pentacle, a shape that Venus and Sun in their own synodic dance describe in Earth's zodiac. Yes, I could go on and on and on. There are 13 and about a third sidereal months in a year. So moon star is such an important thing. Obviously, I celebrate that with my daughter Maya. It reminds me of one more thing I wanted to do before we close. There's this one interesting mythologist whose work I've enjoyed, who is embracing the Ophiuchus 13th sign thing. I often find this is people who are not astrologers first and are drawn into the Ophiuchus, and so they don't know about trines and squares and sextiles, which you can't have in a 13 sign construct, right? Or in a constellational construct in general, because all constellational zodiacs are not equal signs, because the constellations do not describe equal divisions of space. This is why sidereal zodiacs are not constellational zodiacs. And well, I feel like we should honor all of these cosmologies. But I'm also very much a 12 sign guy, because creation creates in 12s. And if that's not the goddess, I don't know what is. But anyway, this one mythologist, in describing why the 13 is so amazing, as he had read from one of the great geometers that 13 is the center of it all, which I very much believe, by the way. But so the 13th sign. No, because you're saying there's a 13th on the ring, which takes the 13th out of the center. And for folks who are most known as sacred geometers, a very well-known one at Gaia TV, you probably know who I'm referencing, talking about the 13th sign. It's like, yo, what about the seed of life? Anyway, why are there 12 signs? Likely because there are about 12 months in a year. Hard to say. It's easier to hear that creation creates in 12s and not 13s when we tune into the harmonic series of music, which is a physical thing. The most precise expression of 12 is in this sacred geometrical pattern that many these days call the seed of life. We find this now everywhere around the world in ancient sacred cultures. Show me one that's made of more than or less than 7 circles that creates 13-fold geometry versus 6, which is 12 and 24. Oh, the hours in a day. It's all there, my friends. And if you want to draw a 12-spoked wheel, this is how you start with the geometer's tools of compass and then rule. This is the framework of the zodiac. And this has sextiles, hexagons, squares, trines, triangles, even the quincunx and the inconjunction. Like, this is the heart of astrology. This is why all my students will study sacred geometry with me if they choose. It's something I prefer to teach. Now, I also honor the beautiful 13ness, which is in the heart of the 5ness, and on and on. And I could speak about all that too long. But you can see I'm personally very biased and kind of triggered by the mainstream astrologers going 13 sign thing. It's like those who lack training on the initiation path, as far as my heart says. Okay, maybe that's just my mind. I'm going to show you another thing. Here's an image from what is this one? September 5th, 2024. So Maya born June 16th, not 3 months old yet as far as the calendar goes. This is obviously a waxing crescent moon. Because this is the sunset sky. This is Venus here on the right at the time, who was with Porama. You might be able to see that star above that's in the waist of the priestess. And then this is Spica on the way on the left here, the shaft of priest, of wheat, the priestess of the heavens holds. The next day, or night anyway, I took this photograph. Where is it? Oh yeah, here it is. Why is that not showing up as an option? Here. Yeah, so the moon has grown in her smile, and then this is Spica nearby. Venus must be off screen. So, that was me back then photographing Maya's lunar return from a sidereal of the stars point of view. And then again, just recently, this whole thing kind of birthed this adventure we're on today, this photograph. And I actually love showing, though we don't see the phase of the waning crescent as well in this other photograph I took that morning. I love this one because it also shows these autumn leaves. Drift by my window, those autumn leaves of red and gold, ba-ba-doo-ba-dee-dee-dee, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, because Maya was born in June in California, that's called spring, almost summer, right? June 16th, very end of Gemini. So while the moon was near that star, it certainly wouldn't have been seen with autumn leaves and not in this phase. But a really cool thing, and this was her 6th sidereal return, and there will be 13 in a year, right? 13.37, but you can't see it, 0.37, y'all. It was cool to see that this is the waning crescent because she was born waxing gibbous, right? Or waning sextile because she was born waning trine. And this is the thing that I learned, which obviously I should have already known. It just makes so much sense that it's about every 6 months, or let's say it's about when we're 6 months old, when the moon will return to the same star that embraced her at the time of our birth. That 6th sidereal month or sidereal or star lunar return will be expressed by the moon in a phase that complements or completes the natal phase, right? So she's born natal, waxing, trine, and then here was the natal, or sorry, the returned waning sextile. And you can put those two shapes together and make the full O. One other thing I didn't finish with you that I wanted to, what's 100 and, oh wait, what was the number? What's 365.25 divided by 2?
365.25
right,
divided.
so 183. What's 183 days after October 24th?
It's Friday, April 25th,
Okay,
2000.
April 25th. So like that half birthday calculator would tell me I'm October 24th, April 24th. So is that my solar opposition, transiting sun opposite natal sun? Interesting question. But watch this one. What's 108? Dang it, I keep forgetting the number. It's 187? Yeah. What's 365.25 divided by 2?
365.25.
183. I should know that. All right. What's 183 days after July 20th?
It's Sunday, January 19th, 2025.
Oh, January 19th. Huh. I thought I was going to get a very different answer. So Ko is at a Waldorf school because he has a birthday in the summer months when they're not in session. His birthday, along with others who have summer birthdays, is celebrated by the school on his half birthday. Now, I thought I remembered when I looked at, 6 months in that regard, or half a year of days, 183 days from July 20th, that I was off by like 4 or 5. Now I'm wondering, because clearly that's not what Siri told me now, either I asked the wrong question to her then, or it might be that his calendar half birthday, I might as well look this up. I'm not going to put his chart on the screen, but that his calendar half birthday is pretty far from his annual solar opposition. Let me see about that. So when he was born July 20th, 2015, I'm going to do sun opposite sun, which happened on January 18th. I'm going to look at mine. And this one I'm happy to share on the screen. I just encourage you to do experiments like this. And that we should do this together. So, constellations, y'all. So, when are my half birthdays? April 20th. Okay, so I'm pretty far away. I mean, interestingly, I got to hear from Siri there that I thought I heard. So let me ask again. What's 183 days after October 24th?
It's Friday, April 25th.
All right, April 25th. So look at that. For me, there's a great difference. I'm just going to do a bunch of these. 420, bro. 421, 420, bro. So it looks like I'm either April 20th or April 21st for my solar oppositions. 421, bro. Yeah, I mean, it's just like that every time, right? But 183 days from October 24th is actually much closer to 6 calendar months being April 25th. So what happened? And the answer is between October 24th and April 25th, the Earth gets very close to the sun. Remember, we're closest to the sun around January 1st. And so between the time between my own solar return and solar opposition will be much shorter than between my solar opposition and solar return. And to return, then it is retrograde time, isn't it? To that flat Earth thing that popped in the screen for a little while. I'm not sure if our flat Earth astrologer is still around or not. This is one of the riddles that the ancients tried to tackle of why, let me state it more clearly, why the seasons, so equinox to solstice, solstice to equinox, equinox to solstice, solstice, why they are not equal length. Because this means it's not a circle. And they were working many of them from this geocentric static Earth at the center, maybe even flat Earth cosmology of like, why is the sun not orbiting in a circle? And some of the things that they had to dream into to try to express this are beautiful, poetic, artistic, ridiculous. So many folks in the kind of flat Earth camp, which, because I look out my window and the Earth looks flat, I mean, I have hills and things, but I can see a horizon forever that comes up to my eyes, even when I'm looking at the ocean. Like a lot of cool points being raised by the flat Earth folks, cool challenges. But you start looking historically, and you start like learning the astronomy, like the Earth, the embodied Earth astronomy. And especially if you learn it from where you're at and then you go witness the heavens from another place, especially a place far away, especially if you can cross the equator and look. And that whole thing just gets pretty round. Oh, hi, the moon. All right. Thanks for spending some time with me, y'all. How wonderful to see you. Winter. So let's just address this. Each day is actually not 24 hours, but 23 hours and 56 minutes. Does that have something to do with the discrepancy? That's a sidereal day or a tropical day. So winter, for example, if you look at 0 Aries rising, or let's like get away from that. Let's say 24 Scorpio rising. How long will it be until 24 Scorpio rises again? A more accurate question for any zodiac degree, 24 Scorpio at the midheaven, back to how long till 24 Scorpio at the midheaven again? About 23 hours, 56 minutes. That's a sidereal day or a tropical day. The sun has moved in that amount of time, almost a degree through the zodiac, and so it takes another 4 minutes if you're looking at sun at the midheaven back to sun at the midheaven. That's the solar day. That's 24 hours. So they're just different periods of time that you're mentioning. And it kind of gets back into the same question. Is it moon star or is it moon phase, right? Is it about a star at the midheaven or our star at the midheaven? That's the difference between sidereal and a solar day. And it has to do with what? Earth did not stop orbiting while she's spinning. And that, by the way, I didn't say this earlier, is also why there is a difference between the sidereal month, moon star, and the synodic month, moon R star, because Earth has moved, or in our experience, in our sky, the sun has moved like 27 degrees in that 27 days of moon star back to moon star. Oh, sorry, 27.3, but who's counting? We are. Neo, a 3-way conversation with myself and Randall Carlson and Robert Grant needs to happen. I would love it so much, but I'm going to have to be nicer. If the latter one could possibly happen, I would love to have a long conversation with Randall Carlson. I've considered going on one of his retreats to learn, but also to just have that opportunity to talk shop. Turanian, my hubs has been sweeping the compass lately, and it's so awesome to see. Rad leather works with hexagonal shapes, amazing to behold him and his craft. That's so beautiful. And I suggest you sweep the compass along with him. Such an amazing thing to see and witness and watch it to come to life. And it's another thing to be the creator of that universe. It's very highly recommended. And Dr. Robert Gilbert, biogeometer. Thanks for the lead. I'm not familiar with Dr. Gilbert's work. I appreciate that. Julie writes, crossing the equator, then seeing the ecliptic sun move daily motion when I face south, not north, is a headspace trip. Oh, so Julie lives in New Zealand, so she's saying when she comes up to the northern hemisphere and seeing the sun's clockwise movement through the sky, it's backwards from the southern hemisphere point of view, where the sun moves counterclockwise through the sky. Guess where clocks were invented? Yeah, watching the moon wax on the left to the right when I go down under, as they say, is quite a trip. And it's very helpful, again, to look at this beautiful heavens that embraces us from many, many places on the body of Mother Earth. It's very helpful to understand more about how things work, things that we really can't see with our eyes. And this is how the ancients came to understand. It's one of many, many ways the ancients came to understand that, yeah, this thing beneath our feet appears to be round as the moon and the sun and the other beings in the sky do. All right, let's go get a haircut. Anyone? Bye-bye.